Good morning, good morning, good morning. I'd like to thank God for all of you that are joining us both live and virtual here in the Metro Atlanta area as well as around the world. This is a community conversation on lung cancer. Our theme is, if you have lungs, you can get lung cancer. I'm Pastor Eddie. I'm the care pastor here at Impact Church, and I want to welcome all of you to our fourth edition. This has been an amazing 4 months with our collaborative partnership with Hill Collaborative and our major and primary sponsor, Amgen. We have given information on biomarker testings, what is lung cancer. We've heard amazing testimonies from survivors and those folk that have gone through the journey. Let me tell you, it has been my absolute pleasure and Impact's absolute pleasure to host these over the last 4 months. And we expect that today, the finale of our 16-week program will be the best ever. And if you don't mind, right where you are, both in your kitchen or in your living room, driving along in the car, if you would, well, if you're driving, don't bow. Keep your eyes on the road. But if you would bow with me for a brief word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you today. This is the day that you have made. We are rejoicing and are glad in it. We thank you for all of those that came out to be a part of this amazing celebration of survivors and information of lung cancer. We thank you for all of our partners. We thank you for every vendor, everyone who have put their hands to the plow. Lord, we give you praise and glory for it. We ask now that you would sanctify this place, that everything that we do be used to lift up your name and your kingdom, that this community, the Tri-City community of Metro Atlanta, will be blessed by the information given today. This is our prayer. This is what we believe, and this is what we decree. In Christ's name we pray. Amen. Hallelujah. Thank you all so much. Can you give the Lord a hand clap of praise while we're here? Hallelujah. We're expecting so many more to come and be with us live. If you are under the sound of my voice and you're not here on campus, I would suggest to you that you drop everything and make your way out to Impact Campus at 2323 Sylvan Road right here in East Point, Georgia. Today we're going to have this workshop will be focused on clinical trials and the legislation to improve healthcare access to our community and to those that are less fortunate. We have so many great speakers. We have neurologists, we have physicians, we have caregivers, we have survivors, we have clinicians around the that have flown in from around the country to be with us here today. And we want each of you, take a few minutes. I know it's Labor Day weekend and it's been a long week, but for your sake and for the sake of our community, take a few minutes. Come out and be with us. We're going to have some giveaways. We have popcorn and ice cream and even things for the children. So please come out today. We'll be here from 11 a.m. until 3 p.m. this afternoon. This workshop has been so amazing. I can't say enough about it. And those of you that know me, you know I'll break out in a shout at any moment. And so I'm going to try to hold my peace and follow this program straight down. I'd like to bring now to the stage our sponsor, a representative from our sponsor, Nate Stevens. Nate is with Amgen. Amgen has been with us from the beginning of these workshops, and they have not only lended their name and their support, but they have put money where their mouth is. And you know, it's easy to say what you'll do, but the scripture says, where your treasure is, your heart is there also. And so from the heart of Amgen, I'll bring to the stage now Nate Stevens, my good friend.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you, Pastor Eddie. He's living up to his name this morning as a bridge to all of us and connecting us here today. So As Pastor Eddie said, my name's Nate Stevens. I am a Senior Manager of Health Equity and Enterprise Advocacy Relations at Amgen. I'm also a physician assistant by training. Amgen is a global biotech company based just outside of Los Angeles, and we're committed to unlocking the potential of biology for patients who are suffering from serious illnesses. And we do this by discovering, developing, manufacturing, and delivering innovative medicines around the world. At Amgen, we believe that health is truly equitable when all people have a chance at a healthier life, no matter what you look like or where you live. Our mission is to serve patients. And we do that through partnerships like this one with the HEAL Collaborative and Impact Church. They know this community far better than we ever will. So we work with them to better understand your needs and to bring you what you need. As some of you may know, this work is personal to me as my mother passed away from lung cancer just over 4 years ago. So it brings me great joy to see all of you here and to know all of you are out there listening. So with that said, I just want to thank again Impact Church and Pastor Eddie. I want to thank the HEAL Collaborative organization. They've been wonderful to work with. Also thank you to all of the other organizations and volunteers that are supporting this event. And thanks to all of you for coming out today and listening. And I hope that you learn a lot and find ways to take action in your health. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Pastor Ed.
Thank you, Nate. And again, thank you to Amgen. You know, Nate said something that was so key. Throughout this journey, I've gotten so many calls from individuals who I'm familiar with and some not so familiar. But they've told me about their loved ones and even themselves. This morning I got a call from our own lead pastor, Pastor Paul Thibodeau, who while on holiday was told that his brother-in-law has lung cancer. Lung cancer is one of those things that, you know, we don't hear a lot about it. It's not, you know, easily talked about, and you don't hear much on the radio and or on television about it, but it is affecting our community at an alarming rate. I won't give all the statistics around that, but I can tell you that from my desk, I hear so much grief, so much pain, and it's usually because the information and the resources are not there. Well, let me tell you, there are resources. Today we have CTCA, the Cancer Treatment Center of America, Longevity. We have the Go2 Foundation. All of these organizations have come together to collaborate and to really say, we want to meet the need of the community. And so if you know someone, if you have a family or a friend that need help and doesn't have the resources, we want you to know that we're here for that. And to that effect, at 12 o'clock today, we will be live on WAOK 1380 AM WAOK right here in Atlanta, and it's thousands and thousands of listeners. So if you're in your car, please tune in at 12 o'clock, from 12 o'clock to 3 o'clock p.m. today at 1380 AM WAOK for the community conversation on lung cancer and its related diseases. Now we're going to move right into our first panel. Our first panel will be moderated by Dr. Lawrence Sanders and his team of experts. These gentlemen have been with us from the beginning, and I'm telling you, every time they come on, I learn something even more about how to combat and defeat lung cancer. Dr. Sanders, I give it to you.
Thank you. First, giving honor to God who makes it possible for all us to be here. And thank you, Reverend Bridgman, for your leadership and for the leadership of Impact Church in bringing this conversation to our community. Our job this morning is to talk about clinical trials. We've been asked to define clinical trials, outline the role of clinical trials in improving lung cancer survival and quality of life, and to translate how clinical trials improve the standard of care and treatment for lung cancer. I'm going to take that a little bit further because we really want to talk about how clinical trials take place and why diversity is important in clinical trials and what we need to do as a community to make sure that we have access to the advances in treatment that continue into the future. I am joined this morning by two outstanding people who have worked in this area for quite some time. Dr. Eric Flanaugh, who is the Chief of Pulmonary and Critical Care Medicine and Interventional Pulmonary Medicine at Grady Hospital and Morehouse School of Medicine, and he's sitting here with me. And also Dr. Alan Pickens, who is the Chief of Minimally Invasive Thoracic Surgery and the Director of this area in thoracic oncology at Emory University and Emory Healthcare. So thank both of you for being here. I thought I'd open just by kind of defining and setting the stage about what clinical trials are, and then to engage in a conversation about how clinical trials have improved the care for lung cancer. Let's take a step back. If we think about the 1900s, life expectancy in America was really very short. And for us as African Americans, it was even shorter than most Americans. But if we move forward to 2022, we've seen significant advances in the treatment of disease, improvement of health, and improvement of life expectancy. You know, along with access to clean water, along with access to sanitation and in controlling infectious disease, advances in medical care have really led to improvements in quality of life. And what has driven this has been research, and particularly clinical research. And clinical research is the research in medicine that involves people. And that's where clinical trials come into play. There are two types of clinical research. First is an observational study, where you look at a phenomenon or an event over time to better understand it. And the second is a clinical trial, which aims to evaluate the effectiveness and safety of drugs, treatments, and interventions, and to make those interventions available to physicians and others as we practice medicine. So the clinical trial really does try to evaluate different drugs, different techniques, and other activities and interventions, and sometimes compares them to other interventions to look at safety and effectiveness. Without this, we don't get advances. And there are basically four phases to a clinical trial. The first is really to look at the safety. And that trial is usually done in a small group of healthy people. Those studies are done in a small group of healthy people, and it allows us to really determine, is this a safe medicine? Is it a safe intervention? We then expand that group of people to include the people with the actual condition or disease to look at the effectiveness of the intervention or of the drug. And then third, once we get beyond that, we broaden the population to look at different doses, different ways of approaches, and to include a more diverse population. So without diversity, this third level of clinical trials really can't take place. And after that, after the FDA approves, the Federal Drug Administration approves the intervention or the new drug, then we moved into phase 4 of the clinical trial, which continues to look at effectiveness. So built into this model are some safety checks. Without this model, medicine would not have advanced to where we are. And as a result of these clinical trials, we've seen advancements in not only the treatment of lung cancer, because if we look back at one point, there were very few treatments, whereas today we have a number of treatments specifically for lung cancer and different types of lung cancer, somewhat driven by the biomarkers that we talked about earlier. So it is these advances that have really made treatment of lung cancer much better and improve the quality of life and survival for people suffering from lung cancer. Now, I'm going to ask Dr. Flanaugh to really talk to us about what have been the advances in the treatment of lung cancer that have come out of clinical trials. Dr. Flanaugh.
Thank you. I think when we start thinking about lung cancer and some of the clinical trials and how they've impacted, I think we step back a little bit and first get with the detection. We noticed that recently, well, it's been recent. A few years ago, there was a national lung cancer screening trial which was aimed to find out and detect those patients which most likely would be at high risk for developing lung cancer, and then when to intervene and start screening for them. And so this was a very large study. It looked at people's smoking histories, their ethnicities, it looked at their ages, and it came up with guidelines that developed from there. And out of that clinical trial, they determined that screening with a CAT scan actually benefited in saving lives for lung cancer. So it's these type of things which looked at observational that was mentioned earlier to determine what guidelines might be for detecting, and then from that you get the clinical trials for interventions which would improve, expedite the care, and prolong life with specific treatments. One of the things mentioned was biomarker testing, which is useful in determining some of the newer treatments and medications for lung cancer, which have been shown to improve survivals for those patients. And it's not using sort of the standard chemotherapy or the radiation therapy, which was a little bit more toxic for patients. And as we move forward through the years, they've determined that there's several biomarkers, several aspects of the cancer's genetic makeup that can be detected that might allow them, the physicians or the treating physicians, to find different treatments which target the specific type of cancer somebody has and give them a better survival than just sort of a blanket treatment. So these are some of the aspects that we've seen, some of the new research that's coming out. You're going to hear a lot about, and we'll talk about this more, that can improve the survival just through the clinical trials.
Thank you, Dr. Flanell. I'm now going to turn to Dr. Pickens and ask him to talk to us about clinical trials and the impact on treatment of lung cancer and what his experience has been with clinical trials. I don't think we can hear you yet, Dr. Pickens.
Am I still not heard?
You're heard now.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion. It's a very critical discussion that we need to have in our community. I want to re-emphasize two very important points that you brought up, Dr. Sanders, in that the safety of clinical trials are essential for the success. And there are many measures in terms of review boards and other regulatory organizations that make clinical trials safe for participants. That's one barrier that we have to overcome in our community. The second point that you brought up is the importance of diversity in these clinical trials. That is very important because we want to know how these drugs and these treatments affect our community as well, not just one segment of the population. With that, the clinical trials that are available don't just involve drugs and markers. Those are essentially important, but there are also surgical arms of clinical trials that we have to participate in to make sure that the operations that are being done for lung cancer are effective in our community as well. In particular, I want to bring to light a very recent trial that is coming to fruition, and that is the CALGB, or Cancer and Leukemia Group B 14503 trial, commonly known as the LTORCI trial. And that is a trial in which we are looking at, do we need to take quite as much lung in order to get effective lung cancer surgery? To put this in perspective, you only have 5 lobes of the lung in your body. The standard of care for lung cancer surgery has been to remove an entire lobe to get good oncologic treatment. This recent trial challenged that thought and suggested that we can perhaps take out a smaller amount of the lung, such as a segment. That's called a sublobar resection. To put that in quantitative terms, there are 20 segments in the lung as opposed to 5 lobes. So if we could take just one segment out and get the same cancer quality of care and survival, we can preserve a lot more lung function for patients and allow them to recover from cancer and be cured, but have plenty of lungs so that they can continue to actively participate in all of the activities of life that they have to go through. So this is a huge clinical trial that is going to probably affect the way lung cancer is treated going forward. So look for that in the future, in the near future, in terms of how it will affect our ability to take care of lung cancer. And please consider participating in surgical clinical trials as well as you decide about your care going forward. This is critical to our better understanding and being able to provide better operations for you to treat lung cancer. The most effective form of treatment for lung cancer is to get it totally removed from the body so that there are no cells left to actually recur in the future. So our participation in clinical trials is critical. Thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to further discussion around these topics.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Pickens. I think we all clearly now understand the importance of clinical trials, not just limited to medications, but looking at strategies for prevention, looking at strategies for early detection, looking at strategies for early diagnosis, and even for helping families and others manage lung cancer and make lifestyle changes. So there are a wide range of benefits from clinical trials. What's the problem? Why don't we as African Americans participate in clinical trials? And I think that's where I'd like for us to spend a few minutes just discussing what are the challenges. I'm going to set the stage by saying this. If we look at people of color, they make up about 30% of the population, but only make up about 18% of the people in clinical trials. And if I take that down to African Americans, we make up almost 12.5% of the population, but there's somewhere between 3 and 5% of us in clinical trial populations. And there have been a number of studies over the last 20 years to try to understand why African Americans don't participate in clinical trials. But let's take a step back even further, because sometimes the history helps us understand the future. The first thing I'm going to say, if you look at the major participants in clinical trials, for the long time, they were mainly white men. During the last 20 years, we've increased that and made many efforts. The studies come up with one common theme of why African Americans don't participate in clinical trials, and that is mistrust. That is mistrust of the healthcare system, and even more, questions about whether the outcome of the clinical trial will actually benefit our neighborhoods and communities. Now, that is long-standing. Some of that goes back to a very difficult study to talk about, and that is what happened in Tuskegee in the early part of the 20th century. And that is not only around sterilization of women, but that is the trial of observing syphilis and looking at its natural course, an observational study, which was not the problem. The problem, however, with the Tuskegee experiment, or the Tuskegee trial, or the Tuskegee study as it's been called, was that the researchers systematically withheld treatment after effective treatment became available. And I think those are the things that are important that we've got to look at going forward. So how do we deal with that? I think we've got to look at the clinical trial. I'm not sure that looking at just trying to get us as African Americans to change our thoughts about trust and mistrust after more than 400 years of dealing with this overnight. That's not going to happen. Maybe we need to look at how we change clinical trials. And so that's where I want to take the conversation for the next few minutes. And I really want us to talk about, I'm going to start with, what do we do to increase the diversity among the researchers who are engaged in clinical trials? Dr. Flannel.
I think as we start bringing opportunities for research to the institutions that have high interest in treating patients in underserved patient populations, and those that employ physicians and practitioners of underserved patient populations or ethnicities. And then we have to start getting out the message out to the community that since even that, the Tuskegee experiment, even though that had a negative impact on the research trust, that it also changed how research was conducted around the United States. They put in laws to prevent things like that from ever happening again. There's now ethical review boards, multidisciplinary ethical review boards that look at studies and say, okay, this is ethical, this is not. We cannot do this, you need to change. So there's a big process going through the research approval steps to avoid things like that happening again.
Thank you, Dr. Flanaugh. Dr. Pickens, what are your thoughts around this same topic? What do we do to engage a more diverse base of researchers? And I think I'm going to share with you why I think this is important. One of the things that I've learned over my career, as a researcher, I tend to map my bias into the data that I analyze, and that's something that I can't do. But I think the more people we have who are diverse, we can get to what is real. So Dr. Pickens, what are your thoughts about adding diversity to clinical researchers?
Yes, sir. We definitely have to get more underrepresented minorities involved with mentorship and pipeline programs to establish more physician scientists in our community. We need to be a part of the review boards, the regulatory boards, and the people that are deciding whether or not these trials are appropriate. We also need to be a part of the recruitment, because when people see people that look similar, they tend to have a little more trust in the process of the clinical investigation. So our efforts to not only make physicians, but also create physician scientists that are involved and concerned about the improvement of the health quality in our own community is so vital to the success of these clinical trials and the research that's going on to improve lung cancer care in our community.
Go ahead, Dr. Flanaugh.
Yeah, and I think those are very key points. And another thing that we need to focus on is getting the message out to the communities. The importance of the research that's being done. A lot of times when I reach out to patients I'm trying to recruit into a study, they're thinking, oh, you're just experimenting on me, or I'm just going to be a guinea pig. But it's not so much that. It's not that at all. What we're actually doing is trying to make sure that our community, our people are represented in the research project, because the data that comes out needs to reflect us. And I can give an example if I have a brief moment. The National Lung Cancer Screening Trial that occurred, that determined the guidelines for screening for lung cancer, only 4% of that population in that study were African Americans, while we're close to 12 to 13% in our US population. So when the guidelines came out, it did not represent effectively our patient population. And so we found that a few years later, and we even put a study out coming from Grady that showed that of the patients that developed lung cancer, 17% of them, 17% of the African Americans would not have even qualified for screening based on the guidelines. It's not because there was a bias or they just didn't want to get screened or whatever. The reason was they weren't represented in the study. And when we went back and we looked at the tobacco use and the age histories and the different screening, the guidelines changed. So being involved in these studies helps represent us for the guidelines and the treatments that become available.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Flanaugh, because I think now you take us to the next level of what we really need to talk about, and that's why diversity is so important. I think you outlined that once we recognize the lack of participation for screening guidelines and then begin to incorporate that, we could make a change. So here's where I'm going to go with this and talk just for a second, and then we'll come back. You know, genetics are one thing, and people often go to genetics as a reason that there are differences in the way people metabolize medicines and other things. But even with the screening guidelines, we're not talking about medicine and metabolism. And what we know from the Human Genome Project is that there's very little variation that can be accounted for by race and ethnicity among human beings. However, based on our societies and the environments, there are extreme differences in where people live, work, play, go to school, worship, and eventually die, related to the distribution of resources in our communities. And that has a lot to do with how treatments and other interventions play in our communities. What do we do? Do we continue to try, and I'm going to take us out on a little bit of a limb here. So what do we do? Do we continue to try to convince us as African Americans to trust the system and the outcomes will be in our favor? Or do we look at ways that we can change the system? Rather than have African Americans come to the clinical trials, what if we were to look at increasing the diversity of researchers and bringing the clinical trials to the neighborhood? And if you notice, I shifted the term away from communities to neighborhoods because neighborhoods are clearly geographically defined. So now this is a little bit of a long shot or a big idea, as probably a better way to describe it, because it changes the distribution of resources even in the clinical trial arena. So what are your thoughts, both Dr. Flanaugh and Dr. Pickens, about changing the models of clinical trials to bring them to the neighborhood such that we can work with physicians and others who serve our neighborhood and then take into account those determinants of health and health outcomes that are reflected in the distribution of resources in our neighborhoods? I know that's a big question, but I think it's one that we can handle. So Dr. Flanaugh, what do you think?
I think that makes a lot of sense. We've seen it even in how we practice healthcare. When we get healthcare out to the communities, to the neighborhoods, when we bring it to them, then people are more engaged. They feel like there's an interest in them, and it gives themselves an interest in the care and the treatments that they want to do. So bringing the research out there and explaining exactly what we're looking for and what we're trying to determine and why it's important to have them involved is very helpful. It not only improves research aspects of it and gives us more information to move forward in medical care, but it also helps us develop and encourage patients to stay engaged with their health, with their treatments and their follow-ups.
Dr. Pickens? Dr. Pickens?
Yes, I think we also have to engage the corporate community in this effort also. We getting closed in underrepresented and minority communities. We have to figure out how we can engage these companies so that we can maintain these healthcare outlets in communities that are more accessible to underrepresented minorities. If they remain open, we can then bring those clinical trials to the community where people are, and they don't have to spend an excessive amount of money trying to get to these remote locations or these larger hospitals in other communities to participate in our clinical trials. So yes, we do need to bring this and make this more accessible to our community so that we can participate more and have the individual needs of our community expressed. We talk about these food islands and food swamps and all of these different concepts within underrepresented and lower socioeconomic environments, but those aren't taken into consideration during the recruitment into many of these large clinical trials.
I think you laid out a very important point there, Dr. Pickens, and that is that the very conditions in which people live impact the outcome of their health and their response to treatments in terms of food, what we eat, how we exercise, whether or not our community is conducive to exercise. All of these are factors that impact health and health outcomes beyond what we as physicians do every day, but in concert with what we as the medical community tries to do as a way of improving health and promoting well-being in all of our communities. I would actually say that, Dr. Flanaugh, there are other comments that you want to make here.
Yeah, there's another benefit that comes out of the model that you described too, and it's not just that the community sees, develops a trust and an understanding of what's occurring through the research. The other aspect comes is that the researchers, they actually start to see the patients that they're trying to recruit in the studies as people, right? A lot of times you can get caught up, okay, this is a research study, this is subject number 1, this is subject number 2, subject number 3. But the reality is these are people with lives, with families, with other things that, as you described, impact their healthcare, their decision making. And once you start understanding as a researcher that these are people with different qualities of life, aspects, concerns, whatever else, it makes you change your research protocols a little bit, how you look for it and how you investigate.
It moves us from the idea of kind of distant researchers to what I call action research, where the researchers are actually engaged in the community. Dr. Pickens, any other facts that you want to bring to us around clinical trials or ideas?
Well, I want to reemphasize the importance of the community and the effects of the environment on the participants in the clinical trials. You know, we are encouraged to exercise and do many things, but in our community where you don't have a safe sidewalk, you don't have a bike lane, all of these things that we need to push for in our community as well, so that we can improve our health and also be available to participate in these trials.
All right, in closing, the challenge in front of all of us that we face together is to ensure that all Americans get access to the advances in healthcare, and that happens in an efficiently and timely and an affordable way. Increasing the diversity in clinical trials and bringing the trials to the neighborhood may help, because everyone must benefit. Thank you very much for this time, and I think we're out of time. Thank you.
Okay, so we're going to continue on the topic on diversity in clinical trials. Thank you so much, Dr. Flanar and Dr. Pickens and Dr. Sanders. That was very, very great information that was filled with a lot of knowledge and wisdom in regards to clinical trials and lung cancer and just bringing awareness. We're going to expound on that. We're from Northside Hospital. We're from Northside Hospital. My name is Renee Gator. I'm one of the research nurses that I work at Northside Hospital. I've been doing clinical research for over 20 years. And we have, with me, we have Binta Henry. Binta Henry's over here on the left. She is our Cancer Care Delivery Research Coordinator. And we just pretty much make sure our clinical trials, we do the clinical trials effectively. And we also have Tamara Wahisi. Did I say that correctly?
Tamara Wahisi.
Tamara Wahisi. She's our medical surgical research supervisor at Northside Hospital. So Tamara has been working with clinical trials for many years as well. She specializes in the medical surgical department. So we're just going to expound on the same topic. We have more hands-on with our patients. The investigators, we work very closely with our doctors, and we are the individuals that help to gain the trust in our patients, help to explain the informed consent form and the clinical trial in details, and mainly and mostly the safety of our patients as they walk through the process in the clinical trial. So I'm just going to ask a few questions, and we can just expound on when we're doing a clinical trial, who should a patient talk to when they're actually thinking about a clinical trial, or how does the process work when we are enrolling patients in a clinical trial?
I'll start with testing. I'll start with that question.
But when you're thinking of starting on a clinical trial, it's best to start with your medical care team. So the people that are around you asking questions, as well as your primary care physician or your medical doctor that you are seeing. And of course, close friends and family that are well trusted, that have information that can help you through that process, and making sure that you're well versed. Empower yourself to go ahead and start looking and researching. There are many online resources that you can find on FDA.gov, as well as clinicaltrials.gov, that is for patients and people who are thinking about starting in clinical trials to go ahead and look and find information about different clinical trials that are ongoing.
Tamara, would you like to elaborate?
So, to piggyback off of what Benta was saying, definitely you want to talk to your physicians about the opportunities that are available to you for whatever your specific condition is. In addition to that, just make sure that you have ample time to review the information so that you're making a sound decision on whether or not this is something you want to participate in. That includes talking to your family, friends, and anyone else who's knowledgeable on the topic. We were talking about consent forms, which we'll speak more about in a little bit, but they're going to be vital in terms of giving you the information that is essential that you need when trying to make a decision about whether or not to participate.
And to add to that, there are something called eligibility criteria. This is part of the process in enrolling patients in the clinical trial. So not everyone may be eligible. Because the patient's safety is always first. We're going to look at your baseline medical history, just make sure your labs, your heart, your lungs, everything is really working at a healthy level, because we're going to actually just research the actual lung cancer and just see how your body is responding to the treatment. So there's usually pretty much healthy individuals. So what we do is do a detailed medical history on our patients, all your concomitant medications that you're taking, to make sure this clinical trial is safe for you, okay? Now we're gonna move on, and we're just gonna go a little bit further in that. Like, what information should patients consider when thinking about enrolling in a clinical trial?
Definitely time commitments, safety, efficacy of the study. Is it the right trial for the individual? I think once you start speaking with your care team, reviewing all of the information, just making sure that it is something that will hopefully benefit you. That's really essential, I think, to making a decision to participate in a study.
Yes, definitely. I would say the risk and benefits, if the benefit outweighs the risk for you, particularly if it's something that it's a big time commitment. There are a lot of scheduled labs, there's a lot of treatments. It is personalized for you in that regard, so making sure that you have the support around you that can help you get to these appointments, as well as talking to your medical care team to let them know, like, hey, these are some concerns that I'm having. We can try to address it. We have programs for travel, we have programs for parking and things like that, as well as like food and hotel. So any things that you think may be a concern for you, just ask the question. I would start with saying, is this a right fit for me? Does this fit my life? Does it fit my family's life? And start there.
Absolutely. I believe having that comfort level is very important when you're participating in a clinical trial. Take time, think about it, read your consent form, speak to your family members about it. Because at the same time, yes, we're here to give you care, but we are here to also collect data, and the integrity of the data is important, and what helps the integrity of the data is your commitment to the clinical trial. So you just have to is this something I really want to do? You can withdraw from a clinical trial at any time. So if something were to come up in your life, you can withdraw from a clinical trial anytime. And if it's not safe for you, we will withdraw you from the clinical trial. But commitment is key, because we are collecting this information and putting it into a database so that we can help the future. So this is an important question, which is a part of our topic. And Dr. Sanders and his team pretty much touched on most of these topics and questions, but we're just kind of sharing it with you from a different angle. From a nursing and coordinator perspective. Why is diversity in clinical trials so important? I know we touched on this, but we're going to elaborate a little bit more.
People experience disease differently. Their symptoms are different. We can have the same disease, but I have different symptoms than the next person, especially in our communities and underrepresented population. Your social determinants of what's around you do affect clinical trials, so it's important that we are represented in these clinical trials to make sure that people like us or in similar living conditions, those things are outcomes that are come out of clinical trials, and so it makes it show that the data is fair and even to show that, hey, this drug, this treatment, this surgery is safe on somebody like me, rather than, the white population.
Right, as Binta was saying, what works for one person does not always necessarily work for the next person, which is key to why diversity is very important in clinical trials. Clinical trials, when you think about anything, any medication that you've ever taken, 9 out of 10 times it's gone the course of a clinical trial. And to really understand who will be most beneficial from a new development, whether it's a therapeutic treatment, a device, or surgical intervention, you do have to be representative of the entire population. And so reaching out to diverse communities is very key to helping us understand how new developments will help everyone.
Yes, the diversity in clinical trials is extremely important. As Dr. Sanders and his team has mentioned, most of the clinical trials have been performed on mainly whites and other races, but not the African American race, due to the lack of trust, due to our history and what has happened. But it's very important, I'll tell you why. The biomarkers that they were discussing, the DNA and looking at all of these details is very important to study our genes and see how effective the treatments are working on African Americans. There was a trial that we were doing, it's a breast cancer trial, but African Americans tend to have neuropathy. Have neuropathy, which is a side effect from a chemotherapy, more than whites. They were able to find effective treatments for whites. Why? Because that's where we have our statistics and our data and our facts. So now what's happening, if you think of a patient that has neuropathy and there's a lot of pain, discomfort from the chemotherapy, what our doctors will tend to do is reduce that dose. And what happens is if that continues to happen, then the chemo will stop. And then this is where you have the statistics on African American has a higher rate of dying from breast cancer than whites. Because we're not enrolling in clinical trials, giving this information, part of the information in clinical trials, we do draw extra labs and bloods that we give to researchers so they can continue to research the DNA and the genes on all populations. So you're helping your race, you're helping your people, we're helping one another when we participate in clinical trials. So we're going to continue and talk about the process, okay? We're going to just elaborate a little bit more on when you're participating in clinical trial, the patient's required to sign an informed consent form. Binta, how about elaborating on what that is?
Yes, so an informed consent, it's a document where it's going to talk about everything that's going to happen to you on this study. It's an informed consent discussion. So this is your opportunity to sit down with your coordinator, to sit down with your nurse, to ask any questions and concerns that you may have. So when we're asking and talking about initially, what should I ask or why should I join a clinical trial, it should give you those answers, and if it does not, make sure that you address them with your coordinator or nurse. But essentially, it is a document that's ethical, that is legal, binding document to you to this trial, saying that I do agree, I'm volunteering to be a part of this trial, and without that document, we would not perform any procedures, you would not go on that study. So it's very important that you have that document and take as much time. We give our patients as much time as they need to take this document home, to read over it, to understand the clinical trial and what could potentially happen to them. And it goes through from what type of data that would be requested from them, what we would do with their data after the study, and as well as their schedule of events and when they'd be coming in. I think that would cover it.
Yeah, in addition to that, your informed consent is really going to give you every single detail about what's expected of your participation in a trial. As Binta mentioned, it's going to talk about the time commitment. It's going to talk about the risks, the benefits, compensation, everything that's required of you. And it should answer all the questions that you may have. It shouldn't leave any stones unturned. If there are additional concerns and questions, that's your opportunity, as Binta mentioned, to talk to your research nurses, talk to your coordinators, and they will be able to help find answers to questions that you may have that may not have been addressed in the consent form. But it should be a very thorough document that you do want to sit down and take your time, review, talk it over with your family, share copies of it with them, because once you sign off on that consent form, it will start your participation in the clinical trial. So you want to get a thorough understanding of what's expected.
Also, I wanted to add that informed consent is not a one-time thing. It's continuous on the study. So every time you come for your appointment, we make sure that you're still agreeing to do these, that you don't have to. It is completely voluntary. And anytime something happens with the protocol or your treatment, or maybe there's more side effects that weren't listed before, we will definitely re-consent you. So we'll give you a new document, you'll read over it and understand these things have changed on a clinical trial. Maybe there's more risk, maybe there's less risk, maybe there are things and benefits they did not know that was going to happen in the trial. So it's definitely continuous, and like Renee, I believe, said, at any time you can decide to not participate in the clinical trial anymore.
And the informed consent form, I believe, will add that trust that we're all looking for and we need, because of the informed consent form is extremely detailed. What happened in history with Tuskegee, they were not given consent forms. They were not informed of anything that was taking place in details with them. So the consent form, it goes through the risks, the benefits, it gives you the side effect of drawing blood. It's extremely detailed. We cannot say, oh, just sign here. The informed consent form is a process that can take up to 45 minutes to an hour. We literally go through each page with you to make sure you are completely understanding everything about the trial. Another thing, before trials even come on, we accept them where we're sharing them with our patients, and the investigators begin to discuss them with the patients. As Dr. Sanders' team had mentioned, there's an internal review board. So the clinical trials are reviewed by a board, and they're not all medical people, they're from all walks of life, and they're reviewing to make sure these trials are safe for humans. So I don't want you to think, oh, we're just being a guinea pig or anything like that. You're not. A lot of times, yes, they're observational trials, but in oncology, you're getting the standard of care treatment, maybe with a little icing on top is what I like to tell patients, but there are some metastatic cancer, maybe the metastatic lung cancer where the cancer has spread throughout the body, you're gonna always get treatment. We're never gonna deprive a patient. That is not safe for a patient. You will always get treatment. The only time you will not get treatment is if the standard of care is observation, and that's because the lung cancer is at an earlier stage.
One last point, Binta touched on it a little bit, but participation in clinical trials is optional, as we know. So I think it's key to understand that even if you do make the decision to participate, if at any time it's not working out for you, you do have the right to discontinue participating. And even if you do that, it comes with no added risk to you. Your standard of care will not change. You will not be penalized for choosing to withdraw from a clinical trial at any point.
Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to move forward on how can patients find out what will be done with their data when they're participating in a clinical trial. I know that's one of the questions. Just to back up, excuse me, before we move forward to that, a question that I do get quite frequently from patients is when you speak about clinical trials, patients tend to think that everything is covered through the clinical trial, that the clinical trial will be paid for in 100%. And typically I'll tell you that's not the case. Whatever standard of care if you were not on the clinical trial, that's what's going to go through insurance. But what will happen on clinical trials, many times medication is provided. The sponsors will provide the medication for free, so that is some of the benefits there. And then sometimes you will be reimbursed for mileage. But whenever someone thinks about clinical trials, correct, they're sometimes in the place that says, oh, well, everything is going to be covered, and that's not the case. So we're going to move forward with how can patients find out what will be done with their data when they're in the study.
Yes, so that will be in the informed consent form. For every single study, it's completely different. They do like to review your data de-identified. So when we send information into the sponsor or whoever's conducting the study, everything is de-identified. You just have a subject number, and that information we send to them through a very secure portal where they extract and look at your data. It could be for 10 years, it could be for 15 years, it can be for however long they would like to look at that data before it maybe goes to the FDA for approval. But it's always secure. The people that are signing the consent with you will go through who will see your information, where it'll be kept, how it'll be housed. So you can ask all those questions if you do not see that, but it's always very secure. And at any time, if you don't want somebody to review your data, or we would talk about possibly withdrawing you from the study. But there will be, your information will be out there too for them to look at, but de-identified, and it's very secure through different channels that we have.
And further, that informed consent will let you know how long the sponsor has access to your data and how it will be discarded once that period has ended.
And as the trial is moving forward and we're doing study visits, we do have data specialists, and sometimes we'll do it ourselves, where we're putting your information. To us personally, you're not a number, but we do not want to reveal your identity. So in the data system, you're just a number in the data system, because we just really want to see the effectiveness and how the drug is working. So we just make sure we enter this data into a database. It's audited pretty frequently. I would say every 5 to 6 weeks, we're audited either by the sponsor, we're audited by the hospital, and the FDA can audit at any time they would like. So this is just making sure we're just not pulling patients off of the street and saying, hey, sign here. The data must stay integral, it must have integrity, and it must be documented clearly, so that if we are audited by everyone, the data they can understand what's being done and that a patient's being safe. And then what the FDA typically does, once the information is collected, if it's an international study or if it's statewide study, once it's collected, this will go into a system and they will determine the approval of that particular drug. I hope this information was helpful. We will be here at the ending if you may have any further questions in regards to clinical trials. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to that amazing panel. Both panels up to this point have been absolutely wonderful. And I want you to remember that in 1 minute, actually right now, we are going live on WAOK Radio. And so we thank God for all of the listeners around the city that are listening in, thousands of you. And if you are close or in the metro Atlanta area, we'd like to welcome you to Impact Church at 2323 Sylvan Road. Please feel free to jump in your car, come on out. There's some amazing information. Don't leave if you're in the room. We have lunch outside. We're going to take a break right after the next two panels, and then we'll go into our afternoon sessions, which are more Q&A. So we want to hear your voices. We want to hear your questions or your concerns. We have policymakers that are going to be on stage in just a few minutes, and they're going to be talking about what legislations are in the pipeline and are being discussed at the state capitol that will affect us and our communities. So please stay here, and if you're listening again on WAOK 1380 AM, find your way to 2323 Sylvan Road, and we are right here, and we're here to help you. And by the way, we do have a lot of vendors that are going to be in between break. They're going to be outside in the foyer area with information about their organizations and valuable information and resources for you and your family. And now we're going to go to our patient and caregiver panel. We really have one individual all the way from Ottawa, Canada, Jill Hamer Wilson, who is an impactor online. Jill, welcome. Come on in. Tell us your story.
Oh, thank you so much, Pastor. It's so good to be here with you all. And I want to say a big thank you to Impact Church, to the HEAL Collaborative, to Amgen, and the whole team involved in this 4-part lung cancer series. Such a great series, and I'm really glad to be with you here online from Ottawa, Canada today. I'm part of this really great speakers team. So thank you all for being here for this strategic session on clinical trials. Clinical trials are a terrific way for people affected by lung cancer to gain access to the best treatments, which could potentially give us years of high quality life. If you or someone you love is affected by lung cancer, please ask your healthcare team if there's a clinical trial that might be a good fit. And we know it takes a whole team to tackle lung cancer. In the United States alone, over 600 people per day are diagnosed with lung cancer. Survivors, doctors, patients, nurses, caregivers, pastors, people who've lost loved ones, supporters, surgeons, medical oncologists, radiation oncologists, physiotherapists, supporters, advocates, administrators, orderlies, technicians, family members, friends, IT people, funders, researchers, and everyone in social oncology, the whole team. Thank you for the good work that you're doing for people affected by lung cancer. So I'm part of, as was mentioned, I'm part of Impact Church. I didn't grow up in a Christian home, but when I was 17, I started to read the Bible and encountered Jesus in a way that just blew me away. And I've been attending church and following Jesus ever since. And when I was in Atlanta in the spring of 2019 for the AACR Scientist Survivor Program, I was part of a group of advocates that Chris Draft invited to come to Impact Church on the Sunday morning. And I want to give a big shout out to Chris Draft, who's an international health advocate and NFL legend. He's a strong supporter of lung cancer advocates and a terrific strategizer. And he genuinely cares about people. He's such an asset and a gifted team builder. So he's going to speak later about the White Ribbon Project, which is not just a great conversation starter, but it's also helping people who are involved in the lung cancer community know that we're not alone, and helping more become lung cancer advocates. So a bit more about myself. As I look back over my life, there are episodes of advocacy scattered all through. I'm an engineering mind against all odds kind of person whose mother changed traffic patterns. So I wonder, is it in the DNA? I did my undergrad degree in engineering at McGill, which is kind of like an Ivy League school up here in Canada. And I learned that my brain is very analytical, structured, dynamic, and adaptable. I also understood that that I have a tendency to lean into a challenge instead of bowing my head to them. And I'm not afraid of challenges, no matter how impossible they may seem. I'll face them with persistence, creativity, and hard work. So when I think about the work that we do in lung cancer today, I'm very aware of the challenges, but instead of bowing my head or backing away, I lean into the challenges. So as I said, my mom was a community activist who changed traffic patterns in our neighborhood. She was a strategic thinker who invested countless hours talking to people and organizing them into teams with block captains. Together they fought City Hall, and they won. At a young age, I learned the importance of teamwork, that together we can fight City Hall. I played a lot of sports and served on many different student councils, teams, and committees. And like many of you, I know the power of teams to work together to achieve greater things than we'd imagined. I spent most of my career building leadership teams and mentoring leaders on university campuses. I got to experience some breakthrough collaborative moments where the teams really got it, where they were genuinely caring for each other as a team, working synergistically together as a team, accomplishing much more than they would have if they'd been working separately alongside each other. And since I've been involved in lung cancer advocacy, I've sought effective teams to join. And where I haven't found them, I've worked to form them. So way back in 2013, this is where my lung cancer story personally begins. I had a cold with a lingering cough following it. And initially I wasn't concerned about that because there was a lot of that going around in the schoolyard where my kids were at school. But after a couple of weeks, it started getting worse instead of getting better. So I went to the doctor. And it took a while to be diagnosed because lung cancer can be hard to find, especially in someone who does not fit the stereotypical profile. So when I was finally diagnosed, we were shocked that it had spread already, so that I was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer back in 2013. And that's when my kids were only 6, 10, and 12. And now I'm so happy to tell you that they're all taller than me and almost 9 years older. They're 15, 19, and 21. And we are so grateful that I'm alive all this time. And we know the reason why is, well, it's the grace of God, and it's also research. Lung cancer research matters. More treatments are approved and accessible, and life expectancy has dramatically increased because research is a game changer. So when I was first diagnosed, they did biomarker testing to know precisely what kind of lung cancer it was so that my healthcare team could match the appropriate treatments. And at that time, the only 2 options available were chemotherapy and a new targeted therapy. So after those 2, I had progression again, and I thought there was nothing else for me except that a clinical trial had become available. And so in 2015, I started on a clinical trial for a new targeted therapy. And without that clinical trial or a miracle, I would have died in 2015 when my kids were still young. When it started, we had no idea how well it would work. We didn't know if it would work at all. But hope is an act of defiance. So we chose hope. And that year for Mother's Day, I asked for an apple tree to be planted in our backyard as a symbol of hope. Now you may know that apple trees take a few years to bear fruit. We had no idea if I would live long enough to see it bear fruit. But we're so grateful that I did. And in more than 7 years since then, there have been so many apples and so much gratitude. When I first started the clinical trial, I was coughing constantly. But this clinical trial started to work right away. Within a few days, I was getting better. And the treatment was so effective that the scans actually showed no sign of cancer. And during that 2-year time before I did eventually experience progression again, researchers developed more treatment options, and each one was better than the one before. So for me, these 9 years have been a roller coaster ride of treatments and progression. And all kinds, like 4 different targeted therapies, 2 different kinds of chemo, radiation. But I'm alive and well. I'm engaged with family, friends, and the community. And my story is one of deep gratitude and hope. Treatments were available and effective every time I needed one, often just in the nick of time. Urgency matters, and holding on to hope really matters, because we never know what research is going to bring us. The next treatment might be just around the corner. But clinical trials, and this is really an important point, clinical trials are not just about research, not just for the future. Clinical trials can also give access to the best treatment options today and mean years of life, high quality life, for people affected by lung cancer. So please, if you're affected by lung cancer or your loved one is, ask the healthcare team if there might be a trial for you or your loved one. And if they seem uninterested in helping you find a good clinical trial, please look for someone who will. This could be the difference between life and death, and you matter. Time matters. Urgency matters. Because clinical trials can give us time to make memories and celebrate milestones. And you can have a long, vibrant run. I would love to say so much more about clinical trials. I will say, make a list of your questions and reiterate that you can stop anytime you like. My personal experience, like so many other people, was to be very well supported and cared for by my clinical trials team, who I'm still connected with. And now I spend a lot of my time advocating for good for people affected by lung cancer. And most of this work is in clinical trials, because a clinical trial saved my life. I know firsthand the difference that research makes. And if you are interested, you don't need to be a doctor or have a medical degree to be involved in the research process. Patients and caregivers and survivors are welcome to represent and speak into the clinical trial process, right from the first ideas all the way through to the sharing of the results. So I would love to connect with you. Please reach out anytime. You can connect with me through Impact Church. I blog at www.throughthevalley.ca. I'm active on social media, Jill Hamer Wilson. And you can also connect via email, which is canadalung@gmail.com. canadalung@gmail.com. Reach out anytime. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Jill. Wow. Wow. Yeah, this is what it's all about. The scripture says that they overcame the enemy by the blood of the Lamb and the words of their testimony. Each of you have a testimony, just as Jill. Your testimony may not be from Ottawa, Canada, but if you're right here in the Tri-City area, we want you to know that you matter. You're important. And while others may minimize and even demoralize you, we want to lift you up. And so we thank God for advocates like Jill and so many more that have been part of our campaign on community conversation. If you have lungs, you can get lung cancer. Now I want to introduce to you I can't explain how important this panel really is. Often we only see our legislators in times when we're voting or in times of crisis. But these men and women that we have here with us today, our Georgia State legislators and Howard Mosley, one of the principals and co-founders of the Hill Collaborative, they're here with us today because they found this to be an important gathering an important gathering to let you know what is happening at your state capitol or our state capitol. So I'm going to introduce Howard Mosby, our own impactor, my beloved friend, Representative Roger Bruce, Representative Dexter Sharper, and Senator Gloria Butler. Howard?
Thank you, Pastor. Thank you, Pastor Bridgman. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Let's do that again. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Awesome. We are glad to be here today. As Pastor Bridgman said, this is probably one of the most important panels. Not that any of the other panels were not important. Let's make sure we get that straight. However, what I like to say is that if you really want to know what's going on in the healthcare space and where all the problems are, go into emergency rooms. And you'll see at the end of policy ends up in the emergency room. And I have here with me three former colleagues of mine that I am just excited to be here to moderate this session with you all. As Pastor Bridgman said, Senator Gloria Butler, who actually runs the Georgia State Senate. As quiet as it's kept, she runs the Georgia State Senate. Dexter Sharper, who we served on the health committee together in the legislature, and I can't say enough about impactor Roger Bruce. Representative Bruce and I go way back in City of Atlanta politics, but he is like a brother from another mother, and I can't do but bow to you, sir, as my mentor in this space. So we're going to get right into it. I want to thank Impact Church for allowing us to be here today, Amgen for actually putting up and not shutting up and saying we're going to be a part of this process. All of you all who have participated in this have done an outstanding job in pushing your voice toward the community, and so it is now our responsibility to take this and take it back to the General Assembly, and let's see if we can move the needle in this area. So we're going to start this conversation real quickly with Advocacy 101. So before we get into lung cancer, there's a lot of misconceptions about how bills are passed, Senator. And is it just as simple as all you got to do is introduce a bill and it's done?
I wish that were true. I wish many times that we could just introduce a bill, everybody likes it, everybody vote for it, and it's done. But that is not the way it works. I am the minority leader in our Democratic caucus in the Senate. First time ever a woman has had that position. And I'm also the highest ranking female in the Senate. Thank you. I've been there a long time. I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a lot of change. I've seen a lot of people come and go. When a person introduces a bill, it has to go through a process. It gets introduced, it gets read, it gets assigned to a committee. They have committee meetings. All of you, if we were introducing something on lung disease, could come in and make a presentation to the committee at any time when we are having those committee meetings. It has to go through that process. It has to get passed out of the committee. It has to go to the most important committee in the Capitol, which is Rules, in order to get to the floor. The legislator that introduced the legislation has to come back time and time again, especially if it's not a popular piece. If it's not a hot piece of legislation, then they almost have to beg to get it out of Rules. And then once it's out of Rules, it can go to the floor for debate and a vote. So that can take the entire session, or it could take a couple of years, or 3, or more.
Okay.
So it is not as simple as just saying, I have a bill, I like this, you ought to like it too. It's a lot more.
Yeah, there are a lot of competing agendas that happen, and just because I feel like that this is a good idea. Somebody else might feel like this is a terrible idea. Representative Sharp, I know that we served on the health committee together. Individuals coming, like the organizations that have come before us today, hospitals, systems, advocacy organizations, how important is the information that they bring to you so that you can actually act on a particular piece of legislation? How important is that to you in your deliberation process?
First of all, let me say this. I appreciate the opportunity to be here today, and thank you for your friendship and everything that you do. And also, Impact Church, I would just like to say that I'm serving Valdosta, Georgia area, and I'm also, here, my office is here in Atlanta. But I like to say I'm also a paramedic for 32 years, as well as a vaccinator. And I would like to say that Impact Church is really making a real impact, because I've been out there in that little room or that trailer, well, the other building that's outside, giving vaccinations on this campus over the last 3-4 months. So I would just like to commend those guys for being involved. And that's what a lot of churches should do: get involved outside the walls and be a part of the community. But I would like to just put that on record, that they are making an impact, and I know it firsthand. So I'm going to say that the information is very, very important. And organizations, just like your HEAL organization here, being the fact that you are a state representative, they have a key person in place to know the importance of getting legislators involved. And a lot of times you have different things that happen across the country. Everybody's protesting, everybody's doing so many different things because of, different incidents are happening. But things like Medicaid expansion, which is costing more lives than maybe a big issue across the country of somebody losing their lives. We're losing a lot more lives because of the lack of having Medicaid expanded in the state of Georgia. That is something that we should be really, really protesting about, shouting about a little bit, whatever we can do. But the information in regards to just what we're doing here and what we did a few months ago about the markers, biomarkers, the information is very important for when we're looking at this, because you have lobbyists that do different things to bring information. But when we're invited to something like this, we hear the thing that the politicians, they are not involved in community. They just come around whenever, they want our vote. They're here, they're there. They always want this and from us. But guess what? Sometimes organizations and people don't invite us to come to anything. So it's on both ends. We want to be involved, but when you allow us to be included in something like this is where you're going to get on the inside. A lot of people may pay money, get lobbyists, do a lot of things to try to get their information heard and seen. But when you just get a phone call from an organization and say, we want you to be a part of what we're doing, then we're sitting here listening to everything that's going on that they talked about earlier, the trials. Took many notes. And I was sitting here formulating, how can we put this in some type of legislation? Where can we start to get the legislation about this? Because that's where you're going to get the things moving and shaking by legislation. We look at the insurance part. He was mentioning something about the insurance part of things being covered and also getting more people involved that way. We got several committees. We have Health and Human Services, insurance committees. We have so many committees that you can submit information to that we can hear your voice. But there's nothing like inviting us to be here, to get this information firsthand, to see the information firsthand, to meet the people that's giving the information firsthand. So if I have a question, I can call doctor and say, Doctor, look, Lawrence, I want more information because I think we may have something here. I think we can take this information in, get with my legislative council, get with maybe the chairman of the committee, get with a few more of the legislators, say, look, guys, check this out. And if I know we can get it past the House part, then I'll call state senator and say, hey, look, what you think about this? Can you carry this for me in the Senate? Then she can do what she needs to do to carry it in the Senate, and then we may have something that we can pass and become law. But it comes from including us and getting the information to us. I know you didn't ask for all this, but I'm just letting you know, and the people that are maybe home somewhere looking at this, that whatever issue you have, whatever you need done, reach out to your legislators. We are we're not used enough like we need to be in the state of Georgia, especially when it comes down to the African American community. We don't get enough calls regarding policy. The organizations need to come out, let's do policy. I don't mind checking out your pothole, but that's something the city council or somebody else can do. We want to help you with some laws, something that can make a difference, that change the lives. Because if we don't have healthy people in our state, we don't have a healthy economy, we don't have a healthy anything. So really the person is number one, and we're going to do everything we can to help with the lung cancer, the biomarkers, the clinical trials, anything we can do. You will have my personal cell phone when we leave here, so you can send me information, my email, so that we can connect. So just remember, if you want us involved, give us an invite and make us feel special on stage and be able to see you guys and talk a little bit. No, I'm just kidding about the feel special part. But just make us feel that you want us to be a part of what you're doing, and we can get the information, and you don't have to pay us a dime, okay? Just give us the information and give us your heart, and we're going to give you our heart to help the situation. Go ahead.
I just wanted to add a couple of things to what you said. And all of what you said, it boils down to relationships. That is the key to building anything that you want to build, whether it's here or at the Capitol. Relationships. When we have a relationship, like he said, he'd give you his cell number. Everybody has my cell number. They call me because they have a relationship with me. I have a relationship with them. And the other thing I just wanted to mention, if I'm breathing at the Capitol, I'm asking for Medicaid expansion.
Yes,
All right. That was awesome. And that's okay. Y'all can clap. Go. Two things that both of you said that I want you to answer, Representative Bruce. I know for a fact, and I know it's a pet peeve of yours, but so I'm gonna lay it out here for you. Individuals can be extremely passionate about their issues, but there are individuals that show up thinking that they can be antagonistic with you. For the lay audience here, without using cuss words, tell people how they need to engage with their elected official for maximum input.
You know, most of the legislation that we deal with started out with somebody being upset about something. Somebody who wanted something, they didn't get what they wanted, so they want a law passed. Or they've come up with an idea on how to make life better for everybody, but everybody doesn't want that to be the case. And people don't understand that our role is not to be antagonistic, so to speak. I can't go to the governor and say, you are really a butthole, but I want you to sign my bill, because he's not going to do it, or she's not going to do it. I should say, she's not going to do it. And but the reality is that, you know, we are diplomats. The job is a diplomatic job. And we've talked about this before, where it's like a baseball team. Everybody understand baseball, right? You got 9 members on the team. Everybody's got a different position, but everybody wants to win the game. But if I'm the first baseman and the ball hits to third base and I run from first base to third base to catch that ball, I'm in the third baseman's way. And guess what? My base is not covered. And that's how I look at all this. You know, my role is to listen to you, the public, find out what legislation you want to get passed, and then go through the process of getting it passed. Can I share the story about the kids? Sure. Do we have time for that? You know, and to kind of show you where I'm going with this, I was talking at A. Philip Randolph Elementary School to 10-year-olds about how bills get passed. And when I left, I got a call from one of the 10-year-olds. And he said, Representative Bruce, I got a bill I want you to get passed. And I was actually surprised that he was even paying me any attention, but the fact that he called, I said, okay, well, tell me. He said, no, I want you to come back to the school, and when you get back to the school, then I'll tell you. So I get back to the school, and it was a room similar to this. He had the principal in there, he had other students in there, the teachers in there. The room was packed. And the bill that he wanted passed was for his parents to be able to come to the school and interact with the teachers, and where their job would not be put at risk if they did it. And I thought everybody had that already. But we looked at it, and there was a lot of companies, if you don't show up, you get fired, and they don't care what the reason is. So what ended up happening is the entire school made this a school project. And they had a room, like I said, similar to this, and some of the students became reporters, some of the students became lobbyists. They came to the Capitol. I had them sit in the governor's office with the governor, 10-year-olds. Parents were sitting around the wall, and the kids told them, said, look, we're not old enough to vote for you, but our parents back there, they are, and if you don't pass our bill, we're going to tell them not to vote for you. That got his attention. And the bill came to be known as the Parent Protection Act. And the bill passed out of the House, got to the Senate. No, you remember this, I bet. Got to the Senate, and the Chamber of Commerce, the state chamber, they fought with the kids. Because we have in Georgia this doctrine of employment at will where they can fire you for any reason or no reason, and they didn't want that changed. So it didn't get out of the Senate that year. But to the senator's point, sometimes it takes years to get it done. And now every single piece of that bill is in state law. It took us, we passed a little piece this year, a little piece next year, a little piece, but every single piece of it is law. And it came about because of the input of a 10-year-old and him being able to organize other 10-year-olds to get the Parent Protection Act passed, and it's done. I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, absolutely. As a matter of fact, a lot of people really don't understand how important it is to pass bills in pieces like that. Opening a crack in the door and being able to pass legislation. Matter of fact, looking at lung cancer, so we go back to the topic why we're here today, biomarker screening access in the state. So we all know about the social determinants of health. Dr. Sanders' panel talked about how the access to food, these food deserts in our community, access to physicians and things of that nature, actually reduce the ability to get access to quality health care. Biomarker screening in this state is not an automatic. And so just a little bit about the biomarker screening piece. We're going to a space where we're doing personalized medicine. And so they're going to look at the genetic makeup of individuals to determine specifically what intervention is right for you in your genetic state and how that particular gene has mutated how we want to irradiate that cell. Well, that's not an automatic in this state. Also, it is very expensive to get to. Last session, a resolution was passed by the House and the Senate to say that this state needs to look at making biomarker screening and testing more available to the citizen. But that was a resolution. It was not statutory. What do we need to do to make this statutory? And I'll just throw this out to anyone of you who want to jump on it quickly or jump on it first. But what do we need to do to make this biomarker screening resolution law?
Well, someone has to draw up a bill, first of all, based on what's in the resolution. The resolution is more or less a request to the legislature to take a look. But the policy, we need policy in order to make it happen. And so when that resolution is turned into a bill, then and passed into law, then it becomes real. We'll be able to, as Howard said, do biomarker testing.
Well, I'm going to add on to that, just in case, when we were looking at the legislation and trying to get a bill that's going to work, maybe looking at other states where it is, that's another thing we can do, look at other states where it has passed and get that bill, look at it and see if it can work for our state. That's one thing you can do. Another thing we can do, that if we still need more information to back up what we're talking about, we can also request that we have a study committee done. And then we do a study committee, then we can go all the way around the state. We'll get people on the, Senate can be a bipartisan, and also, from both chambers, to get people to go out and listen and have opportunities like this for people to, do hearings, because everybody can't make it to Atlanta, but they have interest, and it's part of their, their livelihood and their life. So we can come to them doing work studies. Once we get the information and hear from the people and the experts and the citizens, then we can get that together, and then that'll give us a little bit more push on things, and then get a bill that will work, because we heard from the citizens and both parties heard the same information, and sometimes that can help, get a bill situated where we can get it passed into a law as well.
When you and I first got elected, there was no such thing as Zoom. At least I didn't know about it. And I don't think a day goes by now where I'm not on some kind of a Zoom call. And, before, to your point, we would have to travel across the entire state in order to get everybody's input. Now you don't have to do that anymore. You can just have a Zoom call or whatever one you want to use. There's several of them, but the bottom line to it is that you can get more people involved, and the more people you get involved in what you're doing, the better opportunity you have of getting it passed through the General Assembly. And so to your point, your direct answer on how to do it is to get someone out here to say, we want this to happen. They contact their senator or their representative, and then we work with them to put together statewide input where people don't have to come to Atlanta. And we introduce a bill and work on it.
If we could get some of this division out of the legislature, Republicans and Democrats, Republicans against Democrats, Democrats against Republicans, we could get a lot more done. But because we are so divided, it takes longer to get things done. I can give an example of a bill that I had 3 years ago. It's surgical smoke. It actually passed this past session, but not by me, but it was my bill. Oh, yeah. It was too good for me to pass it. Right. I couldn't possibly have something that good. So the Republicans took it. I got all the credit for it. Because I introduced the bill, couldn't pass the bill. In fact, I couldn't hardly get a hearing on the bill. 15 minutes was all that I got in the committee. So I did a study committee. I did the study committee, had 5 meetings. I still didn't get the bill passed. And finally, after they decided that it was good, and other states are already doing this, Georgia has to be on the bottom of the list. We can't do things first and have somebody follow us. So they got the bill passed this session because they realized it was needed. It was needed.
Yeah, that happens more often than she mentions. Howard and I introduced the same bill every year for at least 10 years to have the state increase the amount of contracts they do with minority businesses. And we never even got a hearing. But this year, we did get a hearing this past session. And the place was packed, because everybody's been waiting on this. And the chairman of the committee, 2 weeks after the bill was heard, changed one sentence in the bill and introduced it as his own. And then the governor, some of you probably have heard about this, recently one of the pieces in there was that we would appoint someone to look at minority-owned businesses and their relationship with the state. That would be their job. And about a month ago, the governor hired that individual. But I'm glad it went through because it was needed. But again, the point is that, you have to be patient and you have to be tolerant, if you're going to hold this role.
I'm going to just be real brief. With that in mind, just for people that's either looking at this or in the audience, I'm also on the Small Business Administration Committee, as well as the Juvenile Justice. So if you have issues in that area as well, let me know. I'm a business owner as well as a financial planning specialist. And a lot of people, like you guys are saying, for years, we try to do things and all of a sudden it's done. It's the greatest thing in the world, because I'm very passionate about financial literacy, especially in the African American community, as well as all of our community, all Georgians. I don't care how much money you have, how much money you make. If you don't know what to do with it, you're going to find yourself in poverty. So I was pushing every year. I would go to the well every year and talk about the importance of financial literacy being put back into our schools. Some of you are old enough, like me, that we had that personal finance class to teach you the budget things about finances and money, but then they took it out. But guess what? All of a sudden, we just passed it to go into operations 2023, but the Republican got it, not me. It wasn't great 10 years ago when I was talking about it, but all of a sudden, it's great. But hey, I'm still happy. I voted for it regardless, but I committed it, and it's happening now. So,
all right. Real quick, the bill was passed in Arizona, Rhode Island, and Louisiana, and so we don't want Georgia to be at the bottom, so we're going to go ahead and introduce that at the top. This has been a wonderful panel, hasn't it been? That time blew by quickly. It blew by quickly. So I think that's it. We're at the end of my panel, and I am going to turn it over to my good friend. Now, this guy right here was a true headhunter with the Atlanta Falcons. But right now, he is doing his level best to end the disease we call lung cancer. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce to you my good friend, Chris Draft.
Guys, I know we're right on our time, so I want to get going because, wow. Can I tell you guys, I want to just put some perspective on this, and that is that this is historic, what's happening. So as you guys are here and as you're watching from wherever you're watching, this is historic. The church that is leading this way, I am biased because this is my church. I've been a part of the Impact community since my late wife said, hey, why don't we go down the street to Brown Middle School? There's a new church. I walked in that new church, and there was a guy named Pastor Olu Brown. And he just happened on that day to have his pastor from home. And he said, a lot of you guys don't know where I'm from. I'm from a little town in Texas called Lufkin, Texas. And as he said that, I was I didn't raise my hand, but I was thinking, I know where that is. Because I got family there. And then as I was looking at him, I was saying, he might be family. Well, he wasn't family. I got a chance to talk to him later, and I realized he wasn't family, but he grew up across the street from my family. He wasn't family, but one of his mentors was one of my cousins. And so my family was able to let me know that this guy who led this new church that is doing church differently was a guy that did things differently from the beginning, that they saw it in him when he was younger. So as I was telling him about this church, it wasn't surprising that he was the pastor. I say that because it's important that I'm excited to be here. And again, I have to be so thankful for the fact that you bought into this. This is not just any church. Again, this is my church that bought into this, all right? So I got to be a little extra excited. And I got to be excited because I know that when we get the information to the people, that lives are changed. So just in case you didn't know that I could whisper it, I want you to know that the information that you guys have shared over this last period of time is going to save somebody's life. Now, I don't know how many, but I know it's saving lives. Right now, it is saving, it is changing lives. Now, the reason why I know that is not because I was always a lung cancer advocate. It's because my late wife, Keisha, I got this picture here because I couldn't get up on the thing. I want to make sure if folks can see that. I don't know if they can. That right there. My wife, Keisha, who had said, let's go over to Impact. She was challenging me to do P90X. She's 37 years old and had a little shortness of breath. And instead of saying, I'm good, I say like a lot of us guys, I'm good. Or, because guys sometimes have a little bit of football player in them where they lie. Leg about to fall off, I'm good. You right? But she wasn't like that. She had a great relationship with a primary care doctor. So when she felt a little shortness of breath, she went into the primary care doctor. So as you guys are listening, I want you guys to know, as it relates to lung cancer, know your body. Take care of your body. We talked about it. And know your body so you can be honest when something is going on. She went in and was honest with her primary care doc. The primary care doc didn't fight against it. She had a little shortness of breath. So primary care, if you guys are watching, it is possible that anyone could get lung cancer. My wife ended up having a mass in her left lung. Got a biopsy right after Christmas. It was December 2010. Came back, lung cancer. That's when I found out that anyone could get lung cancer. If somebody would have said that before. So again, it is important that we recognize our history so that we don't make assumptions. So unless somebody tells you anyone can get it, you might not know. 37 years old, amazing shape, no smoking history. Anyone can get lung cancer. She had an amazing team around her. That amazing team set her up, and that's why she had these experts that were awesome. They were there. Not everybody has that. She had doctors that were surrounding her. So that's why the information in here is critically important, because not everyone has that at diagnosis. I would say there's only a few. You need that. Because how do you make educated decisions if you don't have the people and the experts? So she had that in her crew, right? She went over to Emory, and I know I was listening to the conversation up here, and if some of you guys could see, I was getting a little bit jumpy and edgy and everything like that, and that's why I got to call out Miss Brandy Bryan here in a second, because my wife was tested for EGFR and ALK. If you guys don't know that, that's biomarker testing, because they knew in 2011 that the drugs, the targeted therapies, were better. They were better at that time. So I was jumped up, and again, you guys see me, I'm a linebacker. And I was fired up because I was listening to the possibility of debate, and that debate has already been dealt with, right? Through research. Research already put that debate to bed when FDA approved the drugs. We need biomarker testing. Brandy's got 4 little girls. If y'all don't know, you're going to meet her. You'll meet her outside. Brandy Bryan, she's right there. I had to call her out. Biomarker testing. Terry Connery came down from Charlotte. I gotta give her a shot right here. I got to give a shout out to Jill Hamer Wilson, who is from Impact Church from Ottawa, Ontario. She is alive because she's out positive because of biomarker testing that made it where she could get on that clinical trial. That clinical trial that wasn't just an experiment, but kept her alive. That's why she's alive now. Her son is in college. The other one's about to go. And the daughter is, hold up. It was already decided we have to stop debating it. Now, I get to see this all the time because I know that if you can't go on those biomarker tests, if you can't get on those drugs, then unfortunately you're on chemo. So my wife passed after a year, December 27, 2011. Not before we got married. And on that day she asked me, well, before that day she asked, what if we don't get presents? What if we ask our family and friends to support the foundation so we can fight for others? I said, baby, that's all right. Yes. Right? Because the only thing we really need is for us to have a cure. So the rest of the stuff we don't need. So on our wedding day, we made 2 commitments. One to the lung cancer community and the other one to each other. Right? And that commitment was critical because she went from a point where she was an individual and she had this amazing team that allowed her to fight. It wasn't just her by herself. Everyone needs a team to be able to fight. They're not all blessed with the resources that my wife had that I had. So we got to make up that difference and not just accept them or expect them to make it up on their own. She knew that we needed to help others. Made that commitment before our wedding. She passed a month later, and I had to ask myself a question after she passed. Is, advocacy was critically important, but I needed to understand and really, could I accept that whatever I did moving forward, nothing was going to bring my wife back? Could I be happy for Terry, for Brandy, for Jill, and all the other survivors that are doing well? Could I be happy for them? And then the third one is, will I fight for it? And again, you got me over here fired up because I know with everything we do is about lives. And so I got to put it, I got this shirt on that says love changes everything. And so we have to ask ourselves, the question is, in lung cancer, historically, the love was shown just through getting people to stop smoking. If you are here, if you're watching, I want you to understand that that is old. And it's unacceptable. Yes, we want to help people in terms of prevention and healthy lifestyles and all those things, but survivorship in lung cancer has to be the goal, and that means prevention, yes, early detection, treatment, research, and survivorship. And what does love look like? Maxing all those things out and letting people know that they matter right from the beginning. We're going to fight a stigma in lung cancer with love. And we're going to let all our people know when they get diagnosed that you are not by yourself. And we're not going to say it without, just saying it, you're not by yourself. But make sure they have the resources around them so they don't have to fight like crazy to be able to get the care that they need when they're already in a battle against cancer. So what I want to say, and I'm about to go, I know Quinn just put it up here, is that and I'm going to give a couple of things, and I got to talk about this white ribbon. I'm going to give you that, but I want you to know is that in 2011, Dr. Fennell, he talked about the National Lung Cancer Screening Trial. 2011, that was approved. So lung cancer screening has been proven. We need to max that out. Love means maxing that out, right? Biomarker testing has already been confirmed as leading to transformation in survivorship. We ain't debating that no more. We need to max that out. They shouldn't have to tell their doc about it. They should know about it. We got to go scream about it because I see Brandy, I see Terry, and so many other survivors that are benefiting from it. Research, we have to let people know that research absolutely matters. And then survivorship says we need to meet people where they are. You're not all the same people. You're not all numbers. We got to meet them where they are and make sure that they are supported, number one, knowing that they are loved and they have the information. And I say that in turn that that's what we got to have. And let me give you this. What is this white ribbon really? That's exactly what this white ribbon is about. Heidi Onda said, if we want things to change, she realized that the cancer center wasn't ready for that change. And she said, well, if it's going to change, it's up to us. So she asked her husband to make her a big white ribbon or a big something ribbon. I can't say here in church. A big something ribbon because she didn't want to apologize. She didn't want to have to wait. She knew that if it really mattered, if the lives mattered, that this was not about November Lung Cancer Awareness Month. It wasn't about September. It is a every month, every week, everyday things because over 650, right around that, people are being diagnosed average every day in the United States. So do we love our folks? The ribbon is an expression of love that says we want to meet them with love and make sure they have the information. Every one of you guys in here, if you want one, we want you to have it. There's a ribbon for you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for coming out. And then we want all these churches in here, all around Metro Atlanta. If you have some people that are lung cancer survivors or affected by lung cancer, we've got a ribbon for you. We might have to make some more, but we have ribbons for you. I want you to know we care about you, we love you, and you're not alone. Thank you for coming out. Thank you, Impact, for hosting. Thank you, HEAL, and thank you for everybody that has bought into this and made this a priority. Because that's what it takes. When people come together and make it a priority, it gets done. Thank you.
Let me tell you guys, if you're not fired up behind that, I mean, Chris got me in the seat wanting to go. I don't want to hit nobody. I want to hit lung cancer. I want to knock it out. I want to tackle lung cancer. And I know that you do too. We're going to take a 5-minute break. As Chris said, all of the white ribbons that you see down front, we want to make sure that everyone in this room, and if you're listening to us, whether you're online or you're listening to us at WAOK 1380 AM, come by Impact Church. We have white ribbons for you. We want to represent that lung cancer will not defeat our community, that we will, in fact, overcome. And coming up now, listen. If you have not heard Real Talk with Real People with Real Solutions with Dr. Adrian on WAOK on Tuesdays at 7 p.m., from 7 p.m. to 9, you're in for a treat because she's in the house. She and Harry Brown. Harry Brown, let me tell you, if you have challenges with your nutrition, you have challenges with your young people and getting them to understand the importance of nutrition now so that you don't have to suffer through some of these cancer-related diseases, I encourage you to stay tuned because these two individuals, Harry Brown and Dr. Adrian Berry, are right here in the house, and they're going to give us information. But in the meantime, come up, get you one of the white ribbons, and we have lunch outside in the foyer. We have lunch and popcorn and ice cream, so make sure you go out, get some of that at no cost to you. You're going to love it, and we'll be back in 5 minutes. 5 minutes.
a simple song. Yeah. Yesterday, a man stepped from you made me happy. This you can get. You stood right beside me, yeah, and I won't forget. And I really love you. You should know. I wanna make sure I'm right, girl, before I let go. We've had our good time. That's not to say we've hurting each other. Girl, it's a shame. I won't be foolish, no. I wanna know. I wanna make sure I'm right, girl, before I let go. Yeah. You know I thank the sun rises and shines on you. You know there's nothing I would not do.
Everyone outside, we're ready to get started. Could everyone please come back into the auditorium? Can we have everyone back into the auditorium? Where's my phone? No, not yet. They're going to do the one-on-one. They're going to both do their presentation, and then we're going to do the panel. Okay, you're going to be on the panel. I'm good. Chris, pass me my phone there off the second program. Oh, yes. Okay. Attention everyone outside. Everyone outside of the auditorium, please re-enter the auditorium so that we may close out this in great fashion. Everyone who have your popcorn, you can bring your popcorn in. Just come on back in so we can begin the second session. If we can get everyone back into the main auditorium. Thank you. Thank you. Feel free to bring your popcorn on into the auditorium, but we're about to get started. Everyone, please come back into the auditorium. If we can have everyone back into the auditorium. I see others still out in the foyer.